The real question is no longer whether vulnerabilities can be found, but how quickly you can fix and validate them before someone else does. Welcome back to another Last Week Tonight in Cyber, the industry where the phrase rapid innovation usually means someone has found a cheaper way to ruin your Tuesday. A buzzword of the week was Mythos, and naturally, the industry reacted the only way it knows how, by repeating the name a lot and understanding it just enough to be nervous. Mythos is reportedly an advanced AI system from Anthropic that can autonomously discover software vulnerabilities at scale, with reports suggesting it can identify hundreds of flaws in a single complex application like a browser in one run. Not assist, not suggest, actually go out and find them. And that's what has banks and enterprises paying attention because it fundamentally changes the economics of vulnerability discovery. What used to take skilled researchers days or weeks could now, in theory, happen in hours across multiple targets, continuously, and without human limits. That's a powerful news for defenders, but even more powerful for attackers. That's the uncomfortable part. For years, we relied on the idea that finding bugs was hard, slow, and expensive, when in reality, larger organizations already sit on thousands of known but unresolved vulnerabilities any given time. Systems like Mythos suggest that backlog could be multiplied overnight. If discovery becomes cheap and fast, the real question is no longer whether vulnerabilities can be found, but how quickly you can fix and validate them before someone else does. Because if your answer is still next sprint, you are not running security, you are running the museum. And this is exactly why Bright's angle matters. If discovery is getting automated, then find and fix eventually is not a strategy. It is a scented candle in a burning data center. Continuous testing, auto remediation, and fixed validation become the difference between actually reducing risk and simply producing very elegant PDFs about how doomed you are. Then, in France, a government agency confirmed a breach involving up to 19 million records, names, addresses, birth dates, all the classic ingredients in the identity theft casserole. Officials said accounts were not directly compromised, which is almost as reassuring as the stewardess 9,000 meters above the ground showing you where the exits are. The real problem is what comes next: phishing, impersonation, fraud, and scams that now arrive with just enough personal detail to feel legitimate. Attackers love context. Context is what turns "dear customer" into "hello, Loris. Now, what about your recent booking in Batumi? What about your invoice for Disney Plus? What about that box of anti-anxiety medication you forgot to pick up at that pharmacy down the street?" This is actually a valuable business lesson. Cyber risk does not stay inside SOC. It walks into finance, operations, legal, investor relations, and eventually the CEO's calendar. That is why security validation cannot just be technical theater. If the business depends on an app, an API, a pipeline, or a third party, then the security determines the resilience and ultimately survival of that business. That is the line we keep crossing, from data theft to operational disruption to cyber-physical consequences. It is one thing when attackers steal records. It is another when the target is infrastructure people need to live. At that point, cybersecurity stops being IT risk and starts being, please don't make society reboot in safe mode. So, the theme this week is simple. Everything is accelerating, except accountability, patching, and common sense. AI is finding flaws faster. Supply chains are failing louder. States are getting bolder. Infrastructure is becoming a target. And defenders are still being asked to fix all that by Friday. Which is why the future of AppSec cannot be scan, report, pray. It has to be test continuously, fix intelligently, validate automatically, and assume the attacker has already read the documentation, because they usually have. We are going to leave you here for now to contemplate the doom that is inevitably upon us. If you are still able to get a good night's sleep after this, well, have a good night and see you next week.